What did you want to do when you were little? Did you have aspirations already when you were, let's say, 8 years old? Did you know you wanted to be a professional violinist even then?
Many aspirations. I thought I could do a lot of things, a lot of different things. I wanted to be a figure skater, first of all, because I started skating when I was 3 years old. Because we had a large pond that will freeze over during very, very cold winters in Korea, and all the kids in the neighborhood go out on it. And I'm the youngest of four, so all my three older siblings, they were ice skating, so I wanted to join them. And then I fell in love with just figure skating, period. So I wanted to do that. And we're talking about like when I'm 8 years old, because I was very ambitious 8-year-old child. And then I had just won the Korea Time a competition that was sponsored by Korea Times, which was a big deal for kids my age. And I had just come from studying with like a neighborhood teacher. And then my mom sort of noticed, oh, maybe she has a talent. And so then I was able to go study with a teacher who had just graduated from Juilliard, study with Yvonne Galamian. She had won Jacques Thibault competition, and now she's sort of considered the Dorothy DeLay of Korea. And she has produced a lot of students who has won, international competitions, Nam Yoon Kim. And so I went to her to study with her when I was 8 years old. So yeah, I wanted to be a figure skater. I wanted to be a violinist. And then I looked around. There was no Korean president or politicians that I could find. And I knew that I wanted to help a lot of people in Korea. And so I was like, well, I want to be first female president of Korea. Somebody else beat me to it, but
Oh, I think you would have gotten a lot of votes had you gone that way.
I don't think so. And I'm glad that I stuck with a violin. I did try the figure skating competition as well, but I did not practice the stuff that I would have needed to get through or get to the final round. There were two rounds. First round was like figure eight. Well, one circle was perfect, but the other circle I did not have enough push, so I kind of stopped at the end of it. I was so
Oh,
upset because I had been practicing only the main piece, basically, like jumps and like twirls and all that. So I was deeply disappointed. And then my mother was like, looked at me. She goes, well, but you want the other competition, the violin competition. What more do you want? So she was right. And then, of course, when I came to America when I was 13 years old, my mother said, this is time for you to say goodbye to your skates because we cannot have you fall on your hands. And you're now serious about violin. And also, my dad, we are spending a lot of money on you to sending you to America to study in New York and so forth. So I was like, okay. So I haven't skated since.
oh my gosh! Not even
Yeah,
you've never
it's
gone to,
been decades. I
even
don't
though when
know.
you were
It's
living in New York,
yeah.
you never went down to near the
That
famous Christmas
Rockefeller
tree.
Center. I
Yes.
did. Well, when I first moved there, when I was 13, and I said, okay, well, before I give it up for good, I want to do this one last time. But since then,
Oh,
no. Yeah, well, it's okay.
yeah. No, you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people ask this about professional musicians. Do you have insurance on your hands?
No, but when I did look into it, I don't know if anybody has a recommendation for a good insurance company, but they were much more expensive
Hmm.
than even for surgeons. I had a friend who was a surgeon and he recommended, this insurance company. I was like, and it was 10 times more that I would have to pay as a musician. And I was like, is it because we're not saving lives? You know?
Wow. Well, I completely understand about the hands thing. It's so precarious that our entire livelihood depends on something that is so tangible. And
Yes,
singers are always worried about their vocal cords and something that they can't see. And that's why when they get on planes, I mean, they were the first ones to start wearing these humidifiers and all of that before masks became something that was required on airplanes. But they've
right.
had to take care of their voices for much longer periods of time because just like soloists, you don't get paid until you actually play, right? You don't get
That's
paid for
right.
rehearsals.
Right.
If anything happens between a rehearsal and performance and you can't play, you don't get paid. It's
That's right.
simple as that.
Yeah, I understand. And also like because I love to cook. So when I am actually chopping anything down, like I am like concentrating, like there's no music or there's no wine, nothing next to me. I'm like keeping my eye because I've had some incidences and that's just not fun. But luckily, knock on wood, nothing, bad has happened to my fingers and they're fine.
Have you had, so you were saying that you had some close calls perhaps? Is that when you're
Yes,
cooking?
yes. And I didn't hit a nerve or anything, but that I had bad cuts. And so I would like go to emergency room and they would like bond it, like with crazy glue kind of stuff.
Hmm.
It happened with bagel cutter once, cutting my bagels, of course, not bagel cutter. That's when I decided to get a bagel cutter after that incident. And then another time was when I was cutting a radish. So Korean radish are pretty round and big. And of course, in the back of my mind, my mom had told me always create a flat surface before you're cutting radishes. And then I was in a hurry. I was hungry and I just worked out. And I was like, I got to eat something. I got to get to practicing. So I was in a hurry and just started cutting. And then it slipped and it just caught the very end of my left pinky and it bled a lot. And I was freaking out more. And then that's when they bonded it. It took about a week of not being able to play, luckily. And then you can hardly see it. I don't even know where it was exactly. I think it was right here, but I can't see it.
That's
Luckily, it's
amazing.
fine. So since then, I've been very vigilant about like not, being distracted when I'm cutting any vegetable. And
Wow,
then
you're the
always like
best.
curling my, with my fingers and because I love to cook. And like I don't know about you, but during pandemic, I feel healthier in a way because I didn't okay so when I go on the road, like you have to order stuff and you eat out all the time when you're on the road, so you don't really know what's going into your food and stuff like that, but I usually love to eat healthy. So now that I've been home and I've been good about like trying to exercise every day and like cooking, my own food, and so I feel great. I mean, I feel like I'm like ready to like have the concerts come on back, full force, but I'm patiently waiting, but I'm optimistic at the same time. And thank you for making this happen. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So every concert I played is like so that much more important to me, because I really love it. It
Hmm.
made you kind of like fall in love with what you do again, fall in love with music again, and how much it means to you, and very grateful for any and all the opportunities that come my way or are given to me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So you've talked a lot about things that have given you joy during the pandemic. What do you miss? Is there anything you really miss the most about pre-pandemic times?
Being on the road and yeah, just playing with musicians up and close, without the mask and audience, live
Mm.
audience. Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm getting chills just thinking that that's one day we will be reunited with the audiences, and that would be just I think all of us will feel. I'm sure you feel the same way. Just like really miss it and really important. And I'm well grown to really appreciate them even more. I've always, appreciated having audience because without them, I won't be doing what I do, right? But
All right.
especially now, and I know how much they help me, how much they are so much part of the concert, you
Hmm.
know. So yeah,
Absolutely. They give us, besides adrenaline, of course, which is a powerful drug,
yes,
there's this
yes,
positive energy of people just wanting you to
hmm,
succeed that is just irreplaceable. It
yeah,
really is irreplaceable.
yeah.
So maybe if you're like me, the pandemic is also giving you time to reflect on past musical memories. Is there something that sticks out to you as a favorite musical memory, either recent or long past? Anything come to mind?
Well, as I was talking about the, reviewing the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto, and because I had so much more time to sort of, like when I was in school, my teacher would be like, with a cassette recorder or whatever, record yourself, and then I just realized that I didn't really do that, even though we now have like really good device that it's so easily possible to do. So for me, I mean, and then when I was teaching my students, and I will often suggest that, and yet I wasn't doing it enough myself. So I noticed that how much more efficient I became when I actually recorded myself at the end of the day to kind of review how much more I needed to do, or how this phrasing, if I had thought of it different ways, because you always kind of have maybe this way, I will try this and that. But actually hearing yourself and in the context of the whole movement and whole concerto like that, that really helped me a lot. So I became much more like a student. Like I went into that student mode because of the time that we had available. And how lucky we are as musicians. We always have something to do. And I always felt like I don't have enough time, like between concerts. Great that I have concerts, because otherwise, I have to pay my bills. I don't have, my parents are not helping me with anything like that. So, you feel like you need to make money and you need to pay the bills and so forth. So sometimes you don't have enough time between concerts to really fully prepare. I still feel like I'm never fully prepared, of course, but at this time, or during pandemic times, I thought, okay, now I have one concert. I don't have anything besides this concert to worry about. Really delve into that piece, like full force. And yeah, that really taught me a lot. And I thought, okay, well, there are different ways of practicing this and that. And I knew that it worked. So, it's like,
Hmm.
it's good all around, I guess. Am I still talking about positive things?
Absolutely. We're gonna then use this as a little segue to get into embarrassing things. Like, is there a musical memory of yours that is really
Oh,
embarrassing? That okay? Let's talk about it, please.
so I was invited to play in Caracas, Venezuela. I was playing the Brook Violin Concerto. And after the introduction, before the big tutti comes in, and I decided to do this like big upward gesture, and flies off my bow out of my hand. And then I'm like trying to like kind of catch it, and luckily, maybe because I'm so short or something, it did not break. The bow did not break, but everybody saw that I made that gesture and I dropped the bow. And then I was like so embarrassed about like catching it. And I didn't catch it, but that I caught, I picked it up from the ground up. And the rest of the concert, I was just mortified. I was like, oh, I'm sure they're all looking at me going like, see, when you try to be like, fake, passionate or something, just be genuine. And that was so embarrassing. It happened, I would say probably this is before I signed, this is with during my YCA days, I think. So yeah, maybe third year into like concertizing, I was 21 years old or something, but it was a good lesson learned. So don't do anything so drastic, like try to look cool or something like that. Like just be yourself. Whatever the music moves you that much, that's it. It's all about music. It's not about you. It's not about your gesture at all.
That's
That was
great.
really
You
embarrassing.
know, I think a lot of people would characterize your performances as passionate because of what you bring physically to it that may be on an unconscious level, but that's something
Yeah.
definitely that a lot of people notice about you. And I completely know when things are fake and all that, but
Yeah.
for you, it really does feel genuine when you're up there and
Thank
you're
you.
part of the music.
Yeah, I never ever want to drop any of my bows ever again.
Tell me about the violin you're currently playing. How long have you had it and what is it?
It's made by Francesco Ruggeri in 1669 in Cremona, Italy, and I've had it since I was sophomore in college.
Wow.
That's when I first got the recording contract with Dano Records. And Miss Lay, was like, "Sweetie, you need a better violin to be recording CDs." And so I was looking for a bit, but I couldn't find anything in the price range that I was very comfortable with. And then I multiplied the price range by about 5 times, and then finally found this violin. But at the time, I was very, very fortunate to have wonderful patron who was extremely generous, and she gave me interest-free loan.
Wow.
Barbara Katzander, she passed away 2 years ago, unfortunately. But Anyway, so she said to me, Chee-Yun, you could pay me back when you can, how long ever it takes. I'm not going to give you time, and I'm not going to charge you interest. So I had borrowed a little bit of money from the Marlboro Foundation as well, which I paid off quicker because that had interest rate. But yeah, so I had it since then, and I tell you, this violin, it's something else. Every time now with my piccapo, again, like there's another depth of sound that I didn't know it had. It's beautiful. It's so balanced. There's new wolf notes. You know, wolf notes where some certain instruments, like great instruments, have certain notes you play and it just like it's cackling noise, and you can't do anything about it. None of that. It's flawless, basically. And it sings in the high register. It sounds like a viola or a cello on the lower register. And in the middle, it's just so well balanced. So I've been extremely lucky. And I had been given the opportunity to play on a Strat from Samsung Foundation, extra Strat of 1708 for about 5 years. And I, of course, enjoyed the experience as well. But when I had to give, when the term was up and I wanted to give the violin back, and when I came back to Ruggieri, I was like, oh my God, I'm in love with my Ruggieri all over again.
Oh,
So, and also this violin has a very interesting story. So, when I was first buying this violin, you would do with any instrument that costs a certain amount, you get it appraised. And so at the time, Mr. DeTilly, Frenchman who lived upstate New York, and Miss Lay said, you need to get this violin, looked at by this master and make sure that all the papers are fine and all that, everything is legit. So I take my violin to him and he's looking like, and I was like, oh, please say like positive things because I love this violin so much. I want to buy it no matter what. He said, everything looks like it is Ruggieri, but what bothers my mind the most is that I've never seen a violin looking this new that is over 300 years old. And then he said, do you know any history behind this violin? I said, well, I asked Spine and Fushi where I got the violin from. They couldn't really tell me the list of violinists who has played on it because usually they'll have an ample list. It's been around since 300 years ago plus. They said, no, it belonged to a family in Scandinavian country, but for a very long time. But other than that, it was, from Biddulph Collection in London. No, we don't have any players per se. So fast forward about 8 years ago, I'm playing a concert in Eilat, Israel. And after I played concert, they had this question and answer with the audience members. Some of the live audience members will stay and they will ask questions to musicians. And this one tall gentleman stood up and he said to me, spoke perfect English. He said, well, my father was amateur violinist and he collected violins. Tell me about your violin. So I was telling him about just how much I love it. I got it when I was sophomore in college. I had it for over 20 years. I love it. Da, da, da. And then he goes, okay. And then he came up to me later on after that Q&A was over. He said to me, my father also had one of Ruggieri's violins, but he wondered about your year, 1669, because it was considered one of his finest. Not only that, it was rumored to be buried with one of its owners. So he said, I wonder what happened to that beautiful violin. It should be played on by a violinist. And so he said to me, he goes, I am so glad that it's in your hands and sounds beautiful. And I'm just kicking myself now that I didn't take his phone or business card or whatever, but then this is I guess, no, I didn't have an iPhone. I had maybe like older phone or
the
something
flip
like that.
phone, yes.
And then at the time, there were other people in line that I needed to talk to. Just didn't have enough time to make, one conversation that long with one. Anyway, so yeah, that's the story. And I was like, oh, maybe that's why it looked so new. And it has no wear and tear on my violin. There's no visible scratch on it. You know how like old violins sometimes like they have scratches and no wear and tear, just like Mr. DeTilly was wondering, how is that possible?
So are you suggesting that this violin was actually buried? with its owner and then somehow came to the surface?
It came to the surface because I think probably the family realized that, well, this should be sold because we could make a lot of money. And then I had another story that Laura St. John also has a violin, is it Guadagnini or something, that also had been buried with one of its owners. So maybe it was like some bad thing to do for like very wealthy patrons, when
Interesting.
they die, they want to have, I'm sure the violin wasn't with the body.
Do you have anything that you really like as a post-concert treat?
Drinking wine. And then hanging out with like musicians. We did that, remember?
We did
When we were
that
with our, yeah. Like
after
I love that.
Tchaikovsky. After
Yeah.
Tchaikovsky.
Yeah. So I love that. That's really fun. I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any
Making
favorite
connection
wine?
with I used to drink just everything, but nowadays I noticed that Malbecs or Cabs are like too heavy for me. But Pinot Noir and all whites and rosé, champagnes, and then um, I love drinking. Actually, whiskey is great because I could really stay up late. But then
Mm.
the next morning, I kind of feel, unless I get like 8 hours sleep. So I have like a system. If I know that the next day I don't have to fly out on a like first flight out, I could drink wine and drink whiskey too. But if I have an early flight, stick to wine.
Well, before I let you go, Chee-Yun, we
Yeah.
just have this final series I called rapid fire questions, which are just
Yep.
simply A and B. You can choose one or the other, and
Uh-oh.
don't think too much about it. Okay, these are
Okay.
questions I
Where are
ask
the buttons?
everyone. Rapid fire. Here we go.
Yay. Okay.
Number one, early bird or night owl?
Both. Is that possible?
Nope, choose one.
Okay. Early bird.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Breakfast or lunch?
Breakfast.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
That was quick.
See, I'm wearing
Cats,
like
cats or dogs?
both, but dogs.
Planes or trains?
Planes.
Sun or moon?
Sun.
Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Sweet or savory?
Savory. Lately, I used to be sweet, but then now I've cut sugar during lockdown pandemic, and I really love how I feel. So savory.
Okay. Last question. Rolling Stones or Beatles?
Beatles.
Yay!
Yay.
On the same page.